Well, welcome everyone. I'm delighted to welcome here in person is Glyn Middleton from Screen Yorkshire. And if we can turn to our video wall, we can say hello to Ed Walker from Reach PLC. And Daniel Levitt from inside the newsroom. And today we're really talking about you guys and how you can convert your education into getting your foot in the door and getting that first job. And so I think we'll start, maybe Daniel, if we could turn to you. Good morning. Inside the newsroom is what you're running, and I'm just wondering if you can tell our students a little bit about it.
Sure thing. See, Inside the Newsroom is a newsletter and job board dedicated to helping people like you, the students, early career journalists, mid-career journalists, to find work. So we have a job board that has about 2,500 jobs and internships across the UK, the US and Canada. And we also do lots of Q&As, lots of kind of media insights, advice, essentially just making it as easy as possible to enter the industry. And a big thing that I've found being a journalist at some of these newsrooms is I wasn't prepared for when I actually got the job in these newsrooms. So that's what we kind of try and do as well.
Okay, and it's a small subscription-based service, isn't it? So can you sell our students on the idea of giving up maybe a latte a month in order to subscribe? What would they get for it?
Yeah, so it's around, normally we charge about £3.90 a month, but for students we offer a 50% discount, so it's going to be under £2 a month. So like you said, for about the price of a latte, like you said, you get there's 500, 600, 700 jobs in the UK, all in one place. So what I found when I was in university, it took me about 10, 15 hours a week just to find the jobs. And that just kind of didn't give me enough time to actually apply to them. With coursework and lectures and exams, all that kind of stuff. So essentially the big thing that you're paying for is the convenience, and I'm saving you 10, 15 hours a week. Like I said, most job boards out there aren't as comprehensive as ours, but they also just list jobs. They don't offer that kind of advice as well and that insight. So like I said, for less than £2 a month, you get hundreds of jobs all in one place, but also help and advice of actually how to apply for them. And like I said, also, once you've got the jobs, it's still worthwhile the money, because we kind of tell you how to navigate the newsroom as well.
Okay, great. And Ed Walker, if we could turn to you, looking at basically audience and content director of Reach. A lot of our maybe first year students won't sort of identify Reach and sort of realize it's such a huge company, such a huge employer. So if you could just tell them a little bit about what Reach is.
Yeah, sure. So Reach PLC is the parent company of dozens and dozens of local and regional news brands across the UK. So they'll probably be more familiar with Yorkshire Live, Leeds Live, for example, in your neck of the woods. And then we have our nationals division as well, which is the Daily Mirror, Daily Express and Daily Star. And we have titles all up and down the UK. We employ thousands of journalists, and we've been recruiting a lot during the course of this year. We've created more than 500 journalism roles up and down the country, many of those in local and regional news. And I imagine keeping Daniel's service busy with listing new jobs, which is a good place to be. I very much wish there was a service like inside the newsroom available when I was a student. It sounds fantastic. So yeah, we're always on the hunt for new talent. A lot of our roles are often trainee level or entry level, and once people get into Reach, there's a lot of opportunities to then move upwards within a specific region, or move around different regions, and also move up into our nationals division, sports division. We have a magazines publishing arm as well. So it really is an enormous media organisation. I think second only to the BBC in terms of sheer number of sort of journalist boots on the ground.
And I think that's an interesting message because I think a lot of students in journalism, studying journalism, or wanting to get into factual news are thinking that it's a very closed shop. The opportunities are few and sparse, but it does seem to me, and obviously with you hiring 500 this year, that it is a widening place now.
It's unprecedented at the moment, the number of jobs that there are. We've been recruiting, JPI Media, NewsQuest. Lots of places have been recruiting, and I think it's quite a competitive jobs market at the moment, more so for the employers than it is for the employees. There's choice, which you couldn't say that going back sort of 5-6 years, certainly 10 years ago within regional media, that there is a lot of choice. I'm biased, but I would say Reach is the best choice within that. We invest a lot in our training and development of people when they come in, and we've got countless examples of reporters who started with us, straight out from their degree, often landing jobs before they've even graduated, going into those local newsrooms, getting that experience under their belt, and then working their way up to now become editors. And we also, we fast track people as well. If you've got potential and you've got talent, our editor of Norfolk Live and Suffolk Live, which was only launched a few months ago, she's 23. So it's not one of those places where you come to work, you look upwards, and there's a whole load of 50-odd-year-old men, and you're waiting for them to shuffle off to retirement. We fast track talent. We give people responsibility. We develop people into roles, into editorships, and into other roles that become available.
Exciting. And Glyn, Middleton, you've had a really interesting journey, which is taking you from newspapers into documentary making, into starting up the largest indie outside of London. And now, you were here not too long ago, 2 years ago.
Yeah, university teaching as well.
Teaching, and now you're at Screen Yorkshire. So is there, that excitement in terms of jobs that you're seeing in your new role?
Yeah, I mean, Screen Yorkshire, I've only been at less than 2 years, but everyone else who's in there in our film office will tell you that it's never been busier. We've got more films coming in, more TV dramas coming in. We've got more factual programs being made. We've got more factual companies moving in. There seems to be another one every week in the past year. ITM Productions have moved here, now have a base here. The Garden, that make 24 Hours in A&E, they're now here. Wise Owl, who are part of Lime Pictures, they're now here. A company called Youngest North have just moved here from London. They've got a new Channel 4 commission. It's boomtown. It's absolute boomtown. And our job at Screen Yorkshire is to draw in more and more of that production, make sure that we're getting the films that are filmed here. So we try and persuade and convince the producers of Gentleman Jack and Anne Boleyn, the Railway Children Return, Ackley Bridge. We get all of those and we try to get them here. And then we say to them, don't bring anyone with you. We've got a talent pool here. Use ours, default to ours first. And we have 2 databases of talent where we're trying to make sure that our talent and all of their CVs get to those producers first. But you've got to be good enough. I'm not going to suggest anyone who's not. I'm not going to say, use this Yorkshire person if you're not good enough. I need the talent pool to be exceptional. So that's our job, to make sure that the talent pool here is big enough, versatile enough, diverse enough, and committed enough to be able to fill all those jobs.
Okay, and some of those jobs are jobs that, as a student, you may not really identify with, because we know the big ones. We know the reporter roles. We know the producer roles. They do some of these roles as students, but there's a lot of other roles in television, factual television, especially that you may not know about until you actually get in there. So can you tell us a little bit about those?
Sure. I mean, there's 2 issues. I mean, if I was a recruiter for True North for a long time, and I still talk to a lot of the indies. And there seems to be 2 main points that they say all of the time to me. If they don't say it to you, they say it to me to pass on to you. One is that students and new applicants for entry-level jobs often don't know what your first job is. You kind of apply to them as if you're applying to be a director or a production manager or an editor, and no one is going to employ you in that role in your first job. No one is. No one I know is. You have to know what your entry-level role is, and then you have to say, this is why I'm bloody good at it. These are the skills I've got to match being a runner researcher. It's no good telling me what skills you have as a director, because I ain't going to employ you as a director. So I need you to tell me what you're going to be good at when you come in. So that's one thing. And the other thing is, as Catherine says, there are 1,000 brilliant, interesting, challenging, creative jobs in film and TV. And it's no surprise that you don't know what all of them are. But I would encourage you to keep an open mind. Don't go in with a closed mind. This is my job. This is what I'm going to do. Go in with an open mind, because when you get in, suddenly you say, geez, that production secretary is a good job, isn't it? I like that. Data wrangler. Christ, I wouldn't mind a bit of that. That sounds great. You know, I don't have to limit myself to being a runner or a researcher. So they like, every employer I know wants you to have an open mind to all of these other jobs that you could do that might just fit your skill set. So those are the 2 points that they say most often to me.
Okay, well, if we could go back to Daniel then, in terms of people, obviously you're providing opportunities by listing all the jobs that are available, but what should students do? Often these jobs are, filling in an application form. Sometimes they don't have the opportunity to submit CVs, to send an email, to do that cover letter, which are a lot of skills that we like to teach. But, what are the big sort of ways of making that link?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think it ties back to what Glyn just said, in that recruiters aren't going to hire you if you're not good enough. And essentially the link is obviously, of course, showing these employers that you are good enough. So if there's no opportunity in the actual application process, and I ran against this often, I just set myself the target of 10 emails each day to recruiters, employers, different kind of journalists, types of journalists, editors. So I kind of came from a data and visualization background. So I was reaching out to lots of graphics and data journalists and, data wrangling, data scraping jobs, all that kind of stuff, just to have 10, 15-minute conversations. Obviously, Leeds is a great, I think, like Glyn said, a boomtown right now, so there's plenty of talent there to reach out to have coffees in person, kind of catch-ups. I studied journalism out in America, and I was in Missouri, so I was in 2 hours from any kind of nearest town. So I just got on the phone, had Zoom chats. Like I said, I sent out about 10 a day. I'd hear back from about 1 or 2. But that kind of just didn't deter me, because I just thought that was 2 extra contacts a day. So I think the big thing is, especially what I've learned in my experience, is as a journalist, we're also entrepreneurs, right? Whether that's, once we get into the newsrooms, we've got to find new jobs and kind of think outside the box. So that's got to apply to actually before you find the job as well. So whether it's reaching out to, different contacts, different mentors, that kind of stuff, or do something like I did. I just started my own thing. It started out as a podcast to fill free time. I just wanted to podcast. Then a year later, newsletters became a thing. So I started kind of delving a little bit deeper into what my guests and I were talking about in a newsletter. And then, an opportunity came along to set up a job board, and kind of it's gone from there. So I think the main piece of advice I can give is do everything in your power, do everything in your control to make sure you are good enough, and make sure your experience, your portfolio, your skills get in front of those employers, because often I think we find if we certainly I did, I published a grand piece that I thought was amazing. I thought everyone would come to me, to hire me. But that's just not the case. recruiters are so busy. Like everyone's so busy, but for every job right now, it's such a competitive market, and there's going to be you got to think there's going to be hundreds and hundreds of applicants for each role, and that's the kind of mindset you've got to be under. So you've got to do everything in your power to set yourself above and beyond the field. And there's like I said, there's kind of like the kind of the traditional things you can do, like reach out to people and keep publishing, but just be creative, think outside the box. I think, like I said, we're all entrepreneurs in this, whether or not it's in the traditional sense or kind of just kind of inside you. So I would say, like I said, do everything you can and get creative, because that's the best way. It's not the only way, but it's the best way, in my opinion, to get yourself noticed.
Great. Ed Walker, can you give us some examples of the way people have reached out, for the jobs, for the 500 jobs that you've been posting? How have people set themselves apart to get those jobs?
Yeah, sure. In terms of some advice and kind of how to get yourself noticed, you've got to remember that there's a huge number of CVs coming through, and you're up against your course mates in many cases. You're also up against people coming out of other courses and people coming from lots of other routes as well. So what we look for is people who've got that passion and are able to demonstrate that passion. And studying a media or journalism course is a good indicator that you've got passion for it. But it's about what else are you then doing. So if we get a CV and the only thing on it is that you've studied a journalism course, that doesn't necessarily get you over the line to get you an interview to show what you can do. So it's thinking, what else have you done around that? So if you're able to list that you've been somewhere for placements, or as Daniel said, you've set something up yourself, you may have a blog, you may have a YouTube channel, you may have a Twitter account. If you are publishing and doing active journalism consistently, then that will go a long way, because you are demonstrating that you've got commitment, you've got talent, but you've got commitment as well, and that's what we're looking for as an employer. And then it's thinking about, if you do get to interview, what's the thing that makes you stand out? What's the thing that's gonna make us go for you over someone else? And having that sort of ready in your mind, because you will always get that question in terms of what's the story that you're most proud of, or what's the thing that you want to achieve. Having some, doing your prep for that interview and really thinking about what are they going to ask me, what are they going to want to know about me, and really sort of reflecting on yourself and what you want to achieve will really help. And to Glyn's point about an open mind, a good question to ask is ask whether it's a new role or whether it's a role that's replacing someone. If it's a new role, then an employer is far more likely to take a chance on you, because they're probably looking for a new skill set or a different skill set. If it's an existing role, you're fitting into a news machine. You are a part, that you are the runner, the junior reporter. You are part of a well-oiled media machine. So you are coming in to sort of learn your craft and your trade. So if before the interview you can find out, is this a completely new role? Is this a kind of established role? That will really help you in terms of kind of where do you pitch, in the interview and the questions that you're going to ask.
And what would be the key skills that you would be looking for?
So for us, it's asking good questions. So I think most people who get the jobs, you're able to sustain a decent conversation at the end of the interview, and you ask good questions. You demonstrate that you've got those core kind of competencies that we're looking for in a journalist in terms of writing ability, having that nose for a story, and able to also demonstrate that you understand that your work will go across multiple platforms as well. So for us, those are the kind of the key skills, and we don't get as hung up around things like you must have 100 word a minute shorthand and all of that kind of thing. It's more, what is your passion for journalism? What are you able to demonstrate in terms of storytelling? If you're only on 85 words a minute for shorthand, we'll sort you out once we've hired you. Yes, it's great if you come pre-packaged with all of those kind of things, but ultimately, if you're a good storyteller and a good story getter, then we're gonna take the chance on you and give you that opportunity.
And just off the top of your head, is there any, because students, I think, or anyone going for a job interview knows the, do you have any questions? Question is going to come up. And what are the best questions to be asked, to ask?
The best ones, people tend to ask kind of, what's it like to work in that newsroom? Or they may ask questions about a specific story that they've seen recently, which shows that they're reading and consuming the brand that they're coming to work for. I think that's probably one of the most frustrating things when you're interviewing someone and it's like they have no idea, what the brand is that they're actually coming to work for, and they haven't done that research. They haven't shown that kind of interest in what that publication is doing. Yeah, and ask a bit about your interviewers themselves. How did they get started? What tipped the balance for them to end up working for wherever they are, and what they've ended up doing. Most journalists will like to talk about themselves and their stories. So if you start to tease out a bit about their stories, you'll also get to know them a bit better, and it just makes you more memorable, because they might be. Well, I think my record is I interviewed 15 people in a day. And, with the greatest respect to whoever was interviewed 7th, I probably can't remember who it was. So, you've got to make yourself stand out during the course of that day or week, because they will be interviewing a lot of people who will be in front of them.
Okay, well, Glyn, I think that's some of those themes we were talking about before this talk started. And it's just about really, although it's a lot of work to tailor your CV and to tailor, your research for that interview. Yeah, it's a must, isn't it?
It is really. I'm struck by the similarities of what everyone is saying there. If you're applying for a job at a factual production company, and you're here and you don't watch what they're doing, if you're not consuming, was the word, if you're not consuming the product, if you've not actually studied it, watched it, take note of it, and are able to talk about it, they're not going to be interested in you. I know at least one student, I set an interview up for Days of X Studios, and she was halfway through the interview and they chucked her out because she was trying to pretend that she'd watched one of their shows, and she hadn't. And quite rightly, it chucked her out. I would chuck her out as well. How can you work in this industry if you're not consuming it, if you're not studying it? It's now your job. It's a science. You need to watch as much as possible. But absolutely what Catherine is saying, tailor it to each individual. And I would write a different note, a different CV. I would tweak it perhaps slightly. And in terms of that final question, if you're in an interview with True North or with Air TV or Candid Productions, and you're asked one final question, I would say, I watched that show you did last week. Why do you need 2 presenters? Would it not do with one? I mean, I liked it, but I wasn't sure the music worked really. Why do you think, what age group do you think you were aiming at it there? Because it was at 8 o'clock, and I would have thought it would be better at 9. You need to show them that you're studying what they do. You're understanding and grasping what they do and where you fit in. Importantly, where you fit in. Your strengths are your personal strengths. Your characteristics are as important as your skills. It's great to be able to go in and say, I can do some shooting. It's great. I'm comfortable doing shooting. I can work on Premiere Pro. I can edit some stuff together. But somehow that's not going to get you over the line if you can't tell them that you've got these personal strengths. I'm an engine room of ideas. That's what I do. I come up with ideas every day of the week. I will never be short of ideas. I will be always bringing suggestions in. I'm great with stories. Another common, another thing we have all in common. Stories, ideas, people. I'm great with people. I'm your absolute point of contact for everyone, every contributor who will ever be in your programs. I will hold their hands through the process. You need to show them you're empathetic, you're curious, You're fascinated by the world around you. If you go in and you're a bit of a wallflower and you're not telling them that stuff, they will assume you're not. You have to tell them. You have to put it in a CV. I know everyone puts hardworking, full of ideas onto a CV, but if you don't put it there, they will assume you're not aware that you need to. So it's a mixture of your talents and your personal strengths, and you kind of need both. And if you're not great with people and ideas and stories, then go and practice, because you're not going to get in this industry if you're not. This is built around people. This is built around stories. You can learn how to do it. You can learn to develop your brain so that you are coming up with ideas. It's not easy to be a people person, but you can make yourself do it. You can make yourself better with practice using your films. One final thing, a while ago, we were getting complaints from students saying, well, I've not been able to do a placement and I've not really been able to finish the films in my final year. So aren't I at a disadvantage in getting a job? So we went and interviewed all of these indies and all of these broadcasters and said, the students are worried that they've got no chance of getting in because of those things. And they said, God, no, see it as an opportunity. Because suddenly it's a great leveler. Everyone's on the same level. You tell me what you've done then. You tell me the short films you've gone and made. You tell me the people you've interviewed. You tell me the stories that you've generated. That's what's going to get you the job. Not close, all tutors can close their ears. It doesn't matter to me if you got a first. I would rather have someone with a 2-1 or even a 2-2 who's done lots of stuff outside the course than a first. A first does, as an employer, doesn't matter to me at all. Don't care. Don't care what university you went to. I don't care what A-levels you got. I'm looking at the characteristics and the strengths that you've got that will lift me and my company.
Okay, and a lot of students here, will think, well, Leeds Trinity is a small university. How are they regarded when they go into the workplace, when they apply? It's
got a good reputation, a really good reputation for employability. Lots of universities will still say to me that they're not necessarily preparing students for work, they're getting them degrees. It's absolutely fine, very noble cause, but my background is such that I'm thinking of everyone who's doing these courses wants a job, and I'm trying to get you a job. I'm trying to build a conveyor belt from here into work. So I'm trying to tell you what I think you need to do to get a job. Other people will tell you, what you need to be a creative thinker in university or whatever else, academia does for you. But my job is to say, here's what you need to get in. I calculated at one point that just the universities and colleges that we deal with at Screen Yorkshire probably have about 3,000 graduates a year from media and film and journalism related courses. And we've got skills gaps that we can't fill. We've got indies who are complaining that they've got gaps that they can't fill, jobs that they have to go to London for. They have to bring people in from outside, which is madness. It's madness. You've got to, there's a disconnect. You've got to work out what it is that you can do and sell yourself really well.
Daniel, in terms of setting yourself apart on paper, how can you sell? Like if you don't have those skills, if you don't have the 100 words a minute, how do you sell your personality and your ability to bring sort of very human personal skills when it's not sort of a tick box? It's not 100 words a minute. It's not a number of foreign languages. It's not, perhaps some software skills or something. How do you sell the personal ones on a piece of paper before you get in front of an employer? Oh, sorry, Danny, could you, just asking, can you hear me now?
Sorry, yeah, I can hear you now. Sorry about
that. So just asking really how you sell yourself as a person on a piece of paper, on an application form or a CV. Perhaps you don't have all the, the skills that you need in terms of, software expertise or whatever it is. How do you make sure that the employer knows that you've got the personal, the personality and the personal skills to be able to make you very employable?
Yeah. So I think it ties back to what Glyn just said, in that the employer will, and to an extent what Ed said, the employer will often have, a dozen, however many uh, interviews a day, or hundreds of applications to go through for each job. So so how do you actually portray your personality to paper? That's a really hard thing to do. But I think it goes back to stuff that you've done outside of the classroom per se. So, I've never been an academic. I went to Coventry University, which is a respectable university. By no means a top university on paper. But what I did to get any job is show the employers what I've done outside. So whether that's obviously inside the newsroom, a newsletter, podcast, job board is a great way of showing that. But I've done countless number of internships. I've kind of just broken down the doors. I've kind of I'm not taking no for an answer, that kind of mindset. But it goes back to tying what you've done to what the employer actually wants. There's no point saying, I've done, or rather, there's no point saying I've just done this, I've done this, I've done this. That's great what you've done, but how's that actually going to help the employer? How's that going to help value, add value, help build up the company that you're going to be working for? So often I go through the personal specs and job specs and just kind of write down every single thing that the company's looking for, and before I've even thought about applying, I write down a couple of sentences for every single one, and what that does is it forces me to kind of evaluate and filter what I've actually done. And I think for me that really makes me realize that I've done quite a lot, and applying for jobs is pretty scary, right? It's not necessarily fun, but I think if you can find ways to really kind of build yourself up from inside, that's going to portray onto the screen or paper, however you're applying. So I think from that sense, it's hard. It's really hard, but there's so many different applicants to do that. So yeah, I think try and find a way to link what you've done to the actual job. And I think that's the kind of best way to get your skills across, because if you don't put those down, if you presume that the employers know everything you've done and how that can impact, because I often thought, well, I've done this, that the employer will absolutely definitely know. They'll just kind of start thinking, oh, Daniel can do this to me, but they don't work like that. So I think, and to kind of round it off, I think I always kind of add actual ideas. So like Glyn said, if you haven't watched, TV shows or programs of the company you're applying for, or if you're applying for a title under Reach, if you're not reading them, then it really doesn't look good. So go with ideas as well. So if you're applying for Yorkshire Live, read the content, and you guys obviously in Leeds, so you perhaps know local stories, local trends. Pitch ideas in the application process. There's no harm in doing that as well. There's absolutely, like I said earlier, you've got to do everything you can to kind of set yourself above, and pitching ideas in an application process is great. So yeah, I think there's so many different ways, but it's got to be a kind of multi-pronged approach. Passion, enthusiasm, knowledge.
Okay. And Ed, I know you said that, it didn't really matter if somebody doesn't have, say, 100 words a minute in the shorthand and they only have 85. But obviously, if you're getting hundreds of applications for the same role, there must be that whittling down that happens before you start thinking about perhaps the strengths that you can't immediately see in a sort of skills list.
There is, but it depends what role someone is going for, and I think that's the thing to remember now, is there's a far wider variety of media and journalism jobs than there's probably ever been. So it's thinking ahead of that. So let's say you've got 85 words a minute and you haven't got to your 100 yet, and you're still beavering away on that. we may have an SEO and trends writer role, which doesn't require that. So really looking at those job specs, as Daniel was saying, and thinking, well, can I actually do that role? It is a good thing to do ahead of it. And I think, just don't panic. Finding a job can take some time. So for me, I graduated in 2007. I ran the student newspaper for a year at where I was studying, then started applying for jobs, and it was a financial crash. And I didn't have my my shorthand stuff at that stage. So I spent sort of a year or two doing freelance, doing shifts, building up a hyperlocal site in Preston where I was, so that yes, I didn't have the exact qualifications that were needed. I had a kind of alternative portfolio that made me very attractive to employers when the right opportunity arose. So it's thinking about, okay, I haven't got, I don't know, this very technical thing, but I've got all these other skills instead, and really making those come out on your CV, so that yes, you might be up against someone who has got all of those technical tick box skills, but if they've got nothing else and you've got that bit of something, then you will probably win the day in that interview. To Glyn's point about showing you and your passion and your interests, that's how, if you haven't got all of the sort of tick box qualifications at that point, you can still show that you are a very capable candidate.
Okay, thank you. And Glyn, I mean, a lot of students in their final year, they're really struggling sort of managing part-time jobs. They're trying to get a good degree, please lecturers like me with their work, etc. But this is a really crucial time to actually try and push yourself beyond university, isn't it?
It is really, and I think everyone is agreed on the panel. Everyone is agreed that it's a big component that you need is to show what you've done outside of the course, even if it's just to have created a short film that you've got that you can provide a link to, or a story, or an idea, or you're pitching. You need to show that you're not just, you've not just spent 3 years in a bubble, but that you're actually out there and you're ready to do it. But the big advice from me would be, I made a big point about the fact that you need to be thinking of your the job that you're applying for at entry level, your first job. And in TV, it could be a runner, researcher. If you're a journalism student, you should be thinking, what do I offer them? You go to an interview sometimes thinking, what can they do for me? They give me a job. Sometimes it's about what you do for them. If you're a journalism graduate and you go to a factual TV producer, you're bringing stories, ideas, you're bringing fact checking, which other graduates in film and history and English don't necessarily have the skills that you have. You need to tell them that. Your CV needs to say right at the top, here's the job I'm going for, and here are all the skills that I've got that would make me a great choice for this. I often, sometimes you don't read beyond that. That first half side of an A4 of your CV is where you need to persuade me that you're worth me giving time to. And that's your opportunity to say, here it is. I'm stuffed full of ideas. I am great with people. And here's a clip of something that I did as a student film. Here's a clip of something I did outside of university, just to show you. I found access to an organization, to a person that no one has before. And I filmed this little piece with them. Might not make Channel 4, but I like it. It's interesting. So you need to be showing them. I think if you take anything away from this that we all agree on, I think it's think very carefully about what you can do that's outside of your course that prove that you're the right person. That prove you've got the skills. It's easy to say, I am passionate, I am curious, I am empathetic, I am hardworking. I'll give out leaflets on a wet Sunday night outside a nightclub in Cardiff for you. If that's what you need me to do, you can do all of those things, but you have to prove it. You have to show that you have the appetite and the drive and the energy and the commitment to it. Because I can't think of any company that I know that isn't expecting that. It's a given that you are utterly committed. This career will absorb your life from now on. It is everything. It's your work, it's your life, it's your study, it's your holiday, it's everything. Ideas, stories, people, ideas, stories, people. It's just something they expect from you. So that's my key bit of advice. Drive that home to them, but link the skills that you're putting on your CV and the skills that you're identifying in your interview, link it to that job. Don't waste half a side of A4 telling me that all the skills you have as a director when you're going to be a researcher.
Okay, well, at this point, let's throw it open to you guys because you're the ones who are trying to get the jobs right now. So have we got any questions for Glyn or for our panel virtually? Can we start with?
I've seen quite a few employers at the minute advertising jobs, and the application process only involves filling out a form, and it's not necessarily selling yourself the way you want to, and it definitely is no sort of call or any way to get your personality across. If an employer is looking for that and that's the only thing they're advertising, the only sort of channel they're sort of directing you to, would you say it's unprofessional to try and go around it, to apply and then also contact them?
I can take that one because we make people fill in a form. I think you can attach your CV and things like that. There's absolutely no if you can work out who the brand is, who the editor is, who's recruiting for that role. There is no harm in DMing them if you can, or emailing them and putting yourself in front of them. Being mindful that they will be busy, so they're probably not going to message you back straight away, and also being mindful of what time of day you do that as well. If you're doing that at 7:30 in the morning and they're trying to get their kids ready and get them out the door for school, you're probably going to annoy them more than you help your chances. So email is probably best, and then thinking about what time of day you do that, and also thinking about what is it you're going to add, other than coming across perhaps as too pushy or annoying, to be frank. It's thinking about, well, what am I going to add if I circumvent this form or this system. Those systems are there because, particularly for big companies, it has to be. It's there for diversity monitoring. It's there for efficiency of dealing with a large number of jobs. So if it doesn't quite allow you to do everything you want to do, try getting in touch with recruitment teams. We have a large recruitment team. They'll be able to pass things on to a hiring manager. So sometimes you can use an intermediary like a recruitment team within a large firm to get something to the right person ahead of your interview.
Daniel, yes. Oh, sorry. Shall we?
Sorry. So two things. What I don't know many jobs in film and TV that you're actually that advertise anymore. It's quite rare that I see an advert for a specific job. So most of in our industry, most of the time, it's about people coming to you and you finding a way of telling them what you want. But I like the idea of anyone circumventing rules, because that's what I expect you to do as a researcher. I like you to find ways of problem solving. That's a big part of your job if you come and work for me. When we first started True North, and we were asked by universities and students to do work placements, we said no to everyone. Had an absolute rule. We said no, and the only people we took on were those who came back and said, "Why not? What's wrong with me? I think I'd be great for you." And I thought, that's the kind of person I want. So I'll look at you. And I'll consider you, but generally I won't, as a rule.
But don't come back and ask that question at 7:30 in the morning when you're trying to get your kids ready.
Yeah, preferably not. But I mean, some of the people we took on, were because they were persistent and they came back. They were polite, but they were persistent. And it just so happened that we were looking for someone on a certain day, and it was the 14th time they'd sent the CV, and I can update it. I've made a little film. Here you go. Here's my CV. And I kind of like the fact that they kept going, because again, that's a characteristic I would expect them to have if they came to work for me.
Daniel, I guess that's not music to your ears in terms of, jobs that are out there, but not sort of, people applying for them. So in terms of what you do with Inside the Newsroom, what would you say?
Yeah, no, I just have to kind of repeat everything that's been said already. I mean, circumventing the rules is I think is encouraged. Rules are kind of in a way, some rules are there to be broken, right? But I think reaching out to if there's no option, reaching out to people just shows the basic skills of journalism, right? It's research, it's investigating, it's reaching out to sources essentially. And it goes back to everything we've been saying, is doing everything you can in your control to put yourself in the best possible position for success. So that's completely within your control. Obviously, make sure, like Ed said, make sure you have enough time. People are busy. People have families and kids. So definitely leave yourself. Don't do it, 2-3 days before the deadline. And it's pretty much what I did all along. And I took it very personally when I didn't hear back. I thought, oh, wow, that's a reflection on me. My clips, my portfolio, my experience aren't good enough. It's absolutely not. Like I said, people are extremely busy. But I think that also goes back to what I was saying. That's where making the connections before the application process, before you need a job, really does become very valuable, because you just never know who's going to be hiring. So for me, I got my first kind of full-time job that wasn't an internship. I got it with The Guardian. I was in America, and I followed the graphics editor 2 years before, I even applied, and we just kind of exchanged messages, and I just thought, oh, just messaged him, commented on his pieces, and, just kind of very innocent stuff, that kind of stuff. Job came up on Twitter. I messaged him. I said, do you think I'm good enough? He goes, absolutely, definitely get your application in. Got the job. Now, obviously, that's not to say that, all those things were linked, but it absolutely, in my opinion, absolutely boosted my application to among the top of the pile. And I think tying into what Glyn said, don't be rude, don't be too pushy, but definitely be persistent. I often take on freelancers, interns inside the newsroom, and running a one-man band is a big it's a lot of work. It's kind of a lot of responsibility. I don't have a lot of free time. And one of the freelancers I took on, she'd applied once, kind of didn't go with her, but then she emailed again, kind of with a tailored newsletter that she'd done for Inside the Newsroom. And the next time I was looking for help, I was just like, right, she's awesome. She's got good skills, solid experience, solid CV. No one else emailed me with curated, tailored newsletter. So I took her on. And she went on to grad school, but we worked together for a year, and sometimes it can be as easy as that. So I think definitely it's 100% encouraged. And like I said, think about it. I don't think everyone's going to be doing that. So that's one little thing that you can do. It's going to set yourself above everyone else.
Okay. I think Phoebe had her hand up.
Yeah, I've got the mic as well. I was going to ask, have you got any recent examples where we were all saying how difficult it is to kind of like get across the fact you have people skills and get across the fact you have empathy even before the interview? Have any of you guys got any examples of when someone's really managed to get that across at the CV stage?
Shall I go?
Yeah.
I can tell you a number of examples of people who've got jobs in local production companies because they've taken a specific idea or a film that they've done in with them. That kind of means they've got to the point where they've had an interview. So their CV has been good enough to get them through. But they've also, to reflect that point, there's also been a little bit of networking that's gone on. So there's been some preparation on the ground, I guess. All of this is, I think, is about how do I remember who you are? You know, there are thousands of you. How do I remember your name? If you've done a placement with me, you need to be memorable, not because you've chucked a cup at me, but because you've done something that I remember, and you've come back and said, I've finished that. What about this? And do you need anything at the weekend? Is there anything that I can do? I hear that you've got something going on, a shoot going on the Sunday. Do you need an extra spare pair of hands? I need to remember your name and face. You need to stand out. There are a lot of wallflowers who come in and do the work that they've been asked to do quietly, hand it in, send it in, and then they're kind of forgotten. You need to be memorable. But yeah, I can think of 2 or 3 examples recently where people have taken an idea, a story, a bit of access. In particular, I've got access to this, and I think this will be interesting. But I think you will get a commission from this. But I need you to help me develop it. But I've secured the access. I've opened the door, and that's brought them in. They've got a 3-month contract on the basis of that. If the company's nice, it would also have given them a little share of the production fee, and maybe a share of the sell-on fee if it's sold abroad after that. But yeah, you need, it all goes into what everyone has been saying as an extra component to try to get you over the line. Show that commitment, demonstrate that commitment.
Another question? Yes.
I don't know if this is part of any of your recruitment processes, but I just wondered what advice you had for like navigating group interviews, because they are like a lot different, obviously, to a one-to-one interview. So yeah, I just wondered what you looked for, or what you would look for if you were to like run one.
Have you ever?
The only group interviews I can think of, normally they are very much individual and face-to-face in our part of the industry. The only thing occasionally we do through Connected Campus, what we do is we set up some talent spotting days with ITV, and 20 or 40 people go along to those, and you work as a group and you try to kind of solve problems and issues that are thrown at you. And, you know, the ITV people are sitting surreptitiously watching on to see who's doing what and who's leading the group or whatever. But it's not. I'm maybe not the best person because I can't think of group interviews for a job, really.
Ed or Daniel, can you weigh in on this question?
I've never actually been in a group interview, but I've been in group kind of team building settings and kind of sessions, and I think a lot of the skills that you're encouraged to kind of portray and display there can carry forward. So, you know, ultimately show that you're a team player, right? Like that's the number one reason why you're going to have a team interview, a group interview. They want eyes on how you interact with different people, strangers, right? And how you kind of react to problem solving, different questions, challenges. And I think for me, I've always been kind of like, I want to be a leader and kind of lead the discussion. Not being an ass, right? Like don't be that, of course, but just show that you have the skills to lead a team, delegate, problem solve, and kind of drive the team forward. Yeah, I'm not sure how common they are, but even when you even if you get the job, there's going to be team building days and kind of camaraderie days, and it's a fact of, I guess, working for a company that you're always going to be evaluated, whether that's right or wrong. It's probably going to be a little bit draining, but it's also an opportunity, right? So I think if and when that does happen, show that you're a team player, but show also you can lead, because newsrooms are always looking for leaders, even when they're not, you know, you're not necessarily in a leadership position. People want you know, stories and ideas to kind of push the company forward. So yeah, being a leader.
Right. I can add on that. So I've not held a group interview or been in a group interview. They sound awful. I'm quite thankful that I've never been in one of those. But what we do often do is people might be given a trial shift ahead of a potential job offer, and I guess that's probably the closest equivalent for us. So it's, that is, you've got to prepare for that like you'd prepare for the FA Cup final. That is, you won't be late. Make sure you're there, not too early, but ahead of time. Make sure you've done your research ahead of that. Follow all the journalists you're going to be working with on Twitter. Follow the brand and all its sub-brands on Twitter. Go in with 3 or 4 ideas that you're confident that you can deliver and you want to go further with. And on those trial shifts, don't oversell and don't overpromise. And if you are struggling, then it's better to ask and say that you're not sure about something. And then, to Daniel's point about sort of team player, take the time to make someone a cup of tea. If one of the journalists shows a particular interest in you and what you're doing, talk to them. Don't just go yes and then bury your head back in the keyboard. Hold a conversation with them. Ask them about something to push the conversation back their way. So I guess that's probably the closest thing we would have to that. But I can't give any specific advice for a group interview, I'm afraid.
I think we have time for one more question.
Okay, yeah, this is more specifically a question for Ed. You're talking about there's a lot more jobs in regional news for entry-level graduates. What's changed? How is it different now to how it was before?
Well, we have a business model for digital news. That's why. We're investing because our digital products are growing, our digital audiences are growing. And we've had some great, clever, talented people come in over the years to help drive that growth forward. So that's completely changed the narrative, certainly for us at Reach. So we're able to grow something like Yorkshire Live in the space. It's 4 years ago, pretty much exactly since we launched Leeds Live, which was the forerunner of it. We've been able to grow that newsroom significantly in its size. And that's happened in a lot of places across the country. So the other thing I would say is don't write off the kind of importance of understanding the sort of business of what you're working in, showing interest in that. Yes, the kind of senior grumpy reporter in the corner might not be that interested in that, but your editor will be, because they've got to hit targets. They've got to build a brand. They've got to maintain a brand. They've got to build a team. They're dealing with advertising reps. They're dealing with marketing. They're dealing with all sorts of different things. Journalism is a business. If we don't make money, we go out of business. We cannot serve our core purpose, of holding people to account, but we need to be a business to do that. So that's what's changed, and that's a really good change, because it's been journalists driving that digital audience and driving the new ways that we reach people, and we've taken more of an interest in the business model behind that. So I think that's what's helped to drive that change. So if you can demonstrate some of that kind of entrepreneurship that Daniel mentioned, right at the start, journalists are entrepreneurs. So if you've got an idea for a new type of content we should be doing, or a new platform we should be on, if you make that stand out in your application and you demonstrate how you're already doing it, and then I'm sat there and I go, well, if I gave this guy 4 people, then they could do something amazing. Or if we hire this person, they could do that for us. That's, if you can get into that mindset, someone thinking that way about you during the interview, you're very close to landing the role by the end of the interview. Good question.
Good advice. Yep.
One other thing that just apropos of nothing really, but in case you were going to ask the question, but what I'm hearing from an awful lot of employers is the importance of driving. For some reason in the last 3 months, driving, the ability to drive a driving license is becoming really important. It's not going to stop you absolutely getting a job, but it will make getting a job harder. So think about driving lessons. It's much easier if your CV says right at the top, I have a driving license and I have a car. Suddenly doors are open to you that otherwise would be closed.
Okay, good advice. And I'd just like to thank Ed, Daniel and Glyn, for coming in. And can you show your appreciation?